So my fellow Toastmasters, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to present a proposal. And this proposal may sound a little radical, but I hope by the end of the presentation you'll see why it makes so much sense. Before we start describing what the proposal is, I'd like to ask the audience a question. The question is, what are the two things you should never talk about with people?
Religion and politics.
Religion and politics.
Religion and politics, very good. Is that a new idea to anybody here? No, that's a pretty common idea, right? It's almost like the law of the land now, isn't it? In fact, this time of year, there's a show on TV where Linus actually professes this, although he includes the Great Pumpkin as one of the things you never talk about with people. And it's understandable why this is a common idea, because people get into arguments when they talk about politics and religion. And it's a very touchy subject, especially at work. When you're at work, you're on your employer's time, and he's trying to build harmony with the organization, and the last thing he wants to hear is arguments about politics and religion. So it really makes sense to follow Linus's advice when you're at work. But what about other times? Are there other times when it might be appropriate to talk about politics and religion? A lot of people just say, no, just stay away from politics and religion. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to take a step back, look at the big picture, and see why it might be appropriate to seek opportunities to talk about politics and religion. I know that sounds kind of hairy and radical, but work with me on this, okay? So we're going to look at the big picture. We're going to step back, look at the big picture. We're going to look at polarization. This is something that's going on in the country right now, isn't it? It's really serious. People are actually picking up and moving to areas where people think like them, and they're not even willing to think about what other people's opinions are. They don't want to think about it. They just want to stay in their little groove. So that's kind of painting a big picture for us. How about U.S. voter turnout? The Pew Research Organization, it lists the developed countries, and it compares the people who can vote in the country with the people who are registered to vote in the country. And you look at Belgium and Sweden and Denmark, they're up there in the 80s. The U.S. is lagging behind, number 26 and 55. So this is a big picture item here that we want to keep in mind. This is a Gallup poll. 77% say the moral standard level is going down over the last few years. So another big picture item here. When we look at these big picture items, we have to ask ourselves, is that rule never talks about religion or politics? Is that helping here, or is it actually contributing to these things that we're seeing here? So just keep that in mind. We're going to look at an example, politics. We're not going to look at religion today. We don't have enough time. Politics, the art and science of governmental policy. And the word government is key here. An organization through which a political unit exercises authority according to the distribution of power. Authority, power. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about government. Government is power. It's power either taken or granted. Another concept, power and fire. There's an old proverb about fire. It says, fire is a good servant, but a bad master. We use fire for so many good things. Cooking, manufacturing. But when fire gets out of control, it's trouble. It's deadly. And a good example is the California wildfires that were happening out west. So that is why we have laws when it comes to fire. We have fire codes. Did you know that in Stratford, if you own property that is considered a fire hazard, you can be fined up to $100 a day until you fix it? That's 36 grand a year. That can add up. That's a very severe law. But it's important to have that law because fire is destructive and we need laws to keep it under control. So that principle, let's switch the word fire for government. Government is a good servant, but it can be a bad master. And there are many, many examples in history where that has happened. Government has been brutal to people in some cases. But we want to focus on one particular example. And that is the one that happened back in the 18th century, King George. The 13 colonists. They felt that the government was very abusive back then. The Declaration of Independence is an itemized list of the abuses that they felt were going on back then. And in that Declaration of Independence, it says, when a long train of abuses reduces the people under absolute despotism, it is the right It is the duty of the people to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. In other words, to set up a new government, one that won't abuse them. That's what happens next, Revolutionary War, the colonists are successful, and we set up a constitution. The purpose of the Constitution is to prevent government from being abusive. So they set up these three branches. You have the executive, judicial, legislative. And each is supposed to check the other. And then you got the people on the bottom, and they're supposed to be checking the government. And if everybody's checking each other and the balance is evenly distributed, you're not going to have this abuse of power. And so basically what you have is the Constitution is like a fire code. It's preventing the government from getting out of control. And we, the people, we're on the same team. We are the team that has to make sure the government doesn't get out of control. But unfortunately, what's happening is there's all this partisan bickering going on, and we're forgetting this. If we're forgetting the big picture that we are all on the same team. At least I see that anyway. I don't know if you guys see that, but I certainly see that going on. And it's resulting in this, and this is not good. It's not good for we the people. We have to remember that it's us. It's not some of us against the other, it's all of us. After 240 years, how's that Constitution thing doing? Good news is we still have three branches, and we still have people, and we still vote. But a lot of people are concerned that we're sort of migrating away from what the original fire code said. For example, there's a strong argument to say that the executive power has grown in power compared to the other two branches. This checks and balances that's supposed to be going on, not really working the way it was supposed to be intended. For example, that statistic about voter turnout, 55-60% for US, that's not a good indication. That means that the people aren't really checking on the government the way that they were supposed to originally. And so, famous words from John Adams that says, liberty cannot be preserved without a general knowledge among the people. And how can the people have a general knowledge if they're not talking to each other about politics and religion? So it's really important that we look for opportunities. We have to be tactful, agreed, we have to be diplomatic, but we have got to talk about this stuff. Otherwise, we're going to be in the dark. We're not going to have the knowledge that's necessary to preserve liberty. So, that's my proposal. Step back, take a look at the big picture, seek opportunities for discussion, and find common ground with people and work towards some kind of consensus. Big day coming up, November 6th. Opportunity for we, the people, to speak. If you are uncomfortable with that, or if you're not sure what you're going to see when you go to the ballot box, Ballotopedia is a wonderful website. You punch in your address, and it shows you what you're going to see when you walk into the voting booth. You're going to see the choices. You can look up what those people are about. Excellent tool. So that's my proposal, and I am supposed to offer an opportunity for questions. If you don't have any, that's okay. But if you have any questions you'd like to mention, or if you'd like to discuss this after the meeting, I'd be happy to do that. So are we all good? Oh, Randall.
As far as balances, now you're talking that we are supposed to watch the government, but what if we say that, what if we have people that say that we need a bigger government? We need to give all the power to the government. We like despotism.
Yeah, and there are people who say that, aren't
I want to be told what to do.
Well,
Like marriage.
and so then, wouldn't that be similar to what we had back with King George III? Basically, we didn't have a lot to say back then. We just listened to what happened, and they felt that they were getting abused. So if you do that, if you give all the power to government, you're just opening yourself up to potential abuse. That's the way I see it. I don't know, anybody else got a thought on that?
I'm just curious on where the common ground might be with someone that's similar to that.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Yeah. Well, I always find history is helpful. If you go back to examples in history, like those 4 items, Draco and Ivan the Terrible, you read about those guys. It was nasty what went on back then. And there's no guarantee that won't happen again. I don't know, sometimes people think that somehow we're in this magical time where abuse of power of government can't happen. Of course it can happen. It can happen very easily. It's actually more likely to happen than this awesome situation we have here in this country. I mean, it's a very cool experiment that we're doing. But it will only stay alive if we help it to stay alive. And that's kind of the pitch here. Yes?
This is more asking your opinion. Australia was one of the higher numbers
Yes.
in voting because people in Australia are required to vote by law.
There you go.
As
Should that be a requirement in the US? Wow, that's a tough one. I don't know the answer to that one.
That's gives liberty, so,
Yeah,
freedom, liberty to
Yeah.
do what you want.
Anything that's not specified in the Constitution as a power granted to the federal government, that falls to the states. So that's specifying government, you get hands off. You only have these powers. And unfortunately, people are interpreting the Constitution in different ways, and government's got a lot of power right now. After 9/11, wow, a lot of power. Anyway, that's my time. Thank you so much.